The forest was eerily silent, a heavy mist clinging to the twisted trunks of ancient trees. Moonlight pierced through the canopy in fractured beams, illuminating the clearing where the pack had gathered. Tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. At the center, buried waste, deep in damp soil, was Kale, son of the Alpha King, a boy barely 20 winters old, his dark hair matted with dirt and blood. His chest heaved, the earth pressing against him, the cold seeping into his bones. He could hear the whispers of the pack above him, accusing eyes glowing in the moonlight, voices laced with betrayal and fear. "They say the Alpha's son must pay," growled one elder wolf, his words low, almost ceremonial. "He's weak, unfit. The bloodline must remain strong." Kale's mind raced. He had been trained for the pack, taught to lead, to fight, but a conspiracy had brewed under the surface, fueled by envy and old grudges. Tonight he would die, and the pack would bury the shame of their failed heir with him. But in the shadows at the edge of the clearing, a figure moved, quiet, deliberate, barely more than a shadow. Lyra, an Omega of the pack, had been watching Kale for months. She was underestimated, dismissed as meek and weak, but in her chest beat a heart unafraid of the dark, a will untamed. She had seen the truth. Kale was loyal, brave, and betrayed, and she could not stand idly by while the soil claimed him. The pack began the final ritual, shovels scraping, dirt filling the hollow. Kale's breath came in ragged gasps. Each handful of earth felt like the weight of the entire world pressing down on him. And yet, somewhere beneath the fear, a spark of defiance flickered. He would survive if even a single hand reached for him. Lyra's boots sank into the wet earth as she approached. No one noticed her moving among the trees. No one called her out. Her eyes met Kale's through the thin veil of dirt. A silent understanding passed between them. She would not let this end like this. The pack chanted, a ritual of dismissal, of cleansing, and Kale's body shivered beneath the encroaching darkness. And then, with a final shove, the last of the dirt covered him. The forest seemed to hold its breath. But Lyra was ready. She dropped to her knees near the mound, hands trembling not from fear, but from anticipation. She plunged them into the earth, her nails cutting into mud, roots, and stone alike. The soil resisted, heavy with centuries of pack tradition, but she did not stop. She dug with raw, unrelenting strength, heart pounding with both anger and hope. Kale's fingers brushed hers through the thin layer of earth, a spark of connection in the darkness. He felt life returning to him, not just survival, but the promise of someone who believed he was worth saving. "Hold on," Lyra whispered through the soil, voice muffled yet firm. "I've got you. Just a little longer." The night air was thick with tension, the pack still chanting above, unaware that the Omega was rewriting their fate. Each second felt like an eternity. Each handful of dirt removed a rebellion against the pack's cruelty. And then, finally, Lyra's hands found Kale's shoulders, pulling him upward. Mud slicked against skin, hair matted with grime. But the moment he emerged, gasping, the stars above seemed to shimmer with approval. He was alive. Lyra's chest heaved, arms covered in earth. But her eyes glimmered with defiance and something more, something Kale couldn't yet name, but would never forget. The bond of life shared under the moonlight was electric, raw, and unbreakable. Kale fell to his knees, the cool night pressing against his wet skin, and looked at her. For a moment words failed. Around them the forest whispered, the pack still unaware of the Omega's courage, of the quiet storm that had just erupted in the shadows. Why did you do this?" he finally asked, voice hoarse, eyes locked onto hers. Lyra's lips curved into a slight, knowing smile. "Because someone had to, and because you're not supposed to die tonight." A tremor ran through the forest, the pack's chants fading into the distance. The Alpha King's son had survived, but the story had just begun. And the Omega who had saved him had changed the rules forever. The forest seemed alive with whispers as Kale and Lyra fled the clearing. Mud streaked across their faces, hearts pounding with the rhythm of wolves. Above them, the pack had realized something was wrong. The son of the Alpha King had not been silenced as intended. The shouts and howls rose in anger, the sound rolling through the trees like a hunting storm. Kale's legs ached, muscles screaming in protest, but his mind was sharper than ever. He could feel Lyra beside him, the warmth of her presence a tether to reality and courage. He'd always been trained to trust only the strongest, the fiercest, but here, in the chaos of betrayal, he discovered a strength he hadn't anticipated in her. Over here, Lyra hissed, leading him toward a narrow ravine, roots jutting from the earth like jagged teeth. Her bare hands had already hardened from the digging earlier, and she moved with a surprising grace and agility. She was more than an omega. She was a force of nature, wild and untamed. Cale's chest heaved as he followed her, his mind racing. Why are you helping me?" he asked between breaths, mud dripping from his hair. Lyra glanced at him, her eyes catching the moonlight. "Because no one else would, because you're not meant to die in the dirt like a forgotten pup." Her voice was firm yet gentle, an unspoken promise. They reached the ravine, and Cale realized it was deeper than it appeared. The only way down was to cling to the slick roots and climb carefully. Lyra went first, testing the path, her hands finding every grip instinctively. Cale followed, fingers trembling, but her presence beside him gave him courage. Halfway down, Cale slipped slightly, mud sliding from his hands. Lyra caught him instantly, pulling him against her chest. Their bodies pressed together, heartbeats colliding in a chaotic rhythm. Cale felt heat where the cold should have been, a pulse of something dangerous, magnetic, almost forbidden. "Don't let go," she whispered, her breath brushing his ear. The words were both a warning and a confession, unspoken and raw. Below the ravine, the forest opened into a small hidden grove, a secret place where no pack dared venture. Moonlight pooled over a crystalline stream, casting silver reflections on moss-covered stones. Lyra led him to the water, both of them collapsing onto the soft grass, gasping and shivering from exertion and adrenaline. Cale's hands instinctively found hers. Mud and soil coated their skin, but in that touch was a spark neither could ignore. For the first time in his life he felt seen, not as the Alpha King's son, not as a symbol of strength or weakness, but as a person. And it terrified him. "Listen," Lyra said softly, brushing dirt from his cheek. "They'll come for you. The pack, your father, everyone. If they find us, it's death for both of us." Cale swallowed hard. Fear churned in his stomach, but beneath it, an unfamiliar fire burned. "Then we fight," he said, voice low but resolute. "But I need you with me." Lyra's eyes softened. "I won't leave you, not now, not ever." The grove seemed to hum around them, moonlight flickering through the trees like a blessing. And in that quiet, they shared a long, trembling gaze, two souls forged in chaos, betrayal, and raw defiance. Neither spoke of love yet, but both knew that what was awakening between them was far beyond friendship. It was dangerous, it was forbidden, and it was inevitable. The distant howls of the pack reminded them that time was short. Shadows stretched across the grove, and the night felt heavy with unspoken threats. But as they sat side by side, hands intertwined, Cale realized that he had survived the earth and the pack's betrayal not just because of luck, but because of Lyra. And in the heart of that forest, under the watchful eyes of the moon, the Alpha King's son and the Omega who had dug him from the earth found the first fragile roots of a bond that could challenge even fate itself. The first rays of dawn sliced through the forest canopy, painting the grove in hues of gold and green. Cale and Lyra had spent the night hidden beneath a canopy of ferns, hearts still racing from their midnight escape. But the quiet of morning was deceptive. Somewhere in the distance, the pack was mobilizing. Their betrayal had not gone unnoticed. Cale pushed himself up mud, streaked and bruised, and looked at Lyra. "We can't stay here. They'll find us by midday." His voice was low, determined, but there was an edge of uncertainty. He had never led a flight from his own pack. Lyra nodded, scanning the forest with sharp, calculating eyes. "There's a river a day's run east. If we follow it, we can stay ahead. No pack dares cross it." Her hands tightened around his, a silent gesture of reassurance and defiance. We moved together. The forest seemed to close in around them as they ran. Twigs snapped beneath their feet, and the distant sound of howls grew sharper, angrier. Cale felt a surge of guilt and fear his family, his pack, They had turned on him, yet he still felt the pull of loyalty. Lyra sensed it, her hand squeezing his. "Cale," she said, voice steady despite the urgency, "you're not alone anymore. We survived together. That's the only way." They ran until the sun was high, muscles burning, lungs screaming, but neither stopped. Lyra led the way, instinct and courage guiding them through hidden paths only an Omega could know. Cale stumbled once, caught by her, and their eyes locked for a brief, electric moment. The tension between them crackled like lightning. Fear, adrenaline, and an undeniable attraction weaving together into something neither could name yet. By evening, they reached the river Lyra had promised. Its waters ran fast and cold, a silver ribbon through the darkening forest. They collapsed on the bank, hearts still racing, but for the first time there was a flicker of relief. They had survived the night, but the pack would not stop. The hunt had begun. Cale splashed water on his face, eyes meeting Lyra's reflection in the river. I owe you my life," he admitted, voice low, almost vulnerable. "I don't even know how to repay you." Lyra crouched beside him, dipping her fingers in the water and letting it run over his hands. "You don't owe me anything, but you owe yourself the chance to survive. That's enough." Her gaze lingered on his, intense and unwavering. "And maybe one day you'll understand why I did it. Why I couldn't let you die." Cale swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words settle in his chest. He wanted to tell her everything, the anger, the betrayal, the confusion. But words failed him. Instead, he reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. The connection between them deepened, unspoken yet undeniable. The first howl broke the fragile peace. From across the river, a scout of the pack had spotted them. The sound was a warning and a threat, echoing through the trees like a drumbeat of war. "We have no choice," Cale said, standing with renewed determination, mud streaked across his chest. "We fight or we run, and I won't let them take you from me." Lyra's lips curved into a faint, fierce smile. "Good, because I'm not leaving your side either. Not now, not ever." The river shimmered under the moonlight as the shadows of the pack crept closer, hunting the fugitive Alpha Sun and the Omega who dared defy them. Cale and Lyra shared a look, fear, courage, and a spark of something deeper, and knew that from this night forward, nothing would ever be the same. Their flight had become a war, and their bond had become a fire. And in that forest under the watchful eyes of the moon, two souls bound by survival were about to ignite a storm that could shake the pack to its very core. The night had fallen like a velvet curtain, thick and heavy, hiding Cale and Lyra beneath its cloak. The river behind them roared softly, masking the sound of approaching footsteps, or so they hoped. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig made Cale's heart lurch. The pack was close now. He could feel their presence, a pulse of anger and authority weaving through the forest like smoke. Lyra crouched beside him, ears twitching, eyes sharp as moonlight. "They're scouting," she whispered, voice like silk and steel combined. "We need to stay low or we die." Cale nodded, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him harder than the betrayal that had buried him alive. This was no longer just survival, it was defiance, vengeance, and something entirely new. Something terrifyingly exhilarating. From the shadows, a low growl rumbled. Cale tensed, instinct taking over, and his hand found hers. Their fingers laced together, a lifeline amid chaos. He'd never admitted it to anyone, but in that touch, he felt strength he hadn't known he possessed. The first scout stepped into the moonlight, eyes wide in disbelief at the sight of Cale alive. Lyra reacted first, moving with fluid precision, her Omega instincts sharpening. She shoved Cale behind a moss-covered tree, then stepped into the clearing herself. Looking for someone, she called, voice teasing yet dangerous. The scout froze, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Cale peeked around the tree, chest tight. He wanted to leap forward to fight for the first time openly, but he trusted her to lead. He had no choice. This was her domain, and she was brilliant at navigating the shadows. Suddenly, the scout lunged, fangs bared, but Lyra was faster. A blur of motion, a strike, and the wolf stumbled back, retreating with a yelp. The other scouts emerged from the trees, snarling, circling, but the pair had already moved, slipping between roots and underbrush like ghosts of the forest. Cale's lungs burned as he ran beside her. "You're incredible," he gasped, mud streaking his face. Lyra's eyes sparkled with a dangerous grin. "You haven't seen anything yet," she said, voice low, intimate. "I've got you, Cale, and if they want to fight, they'll have to go through me." For the first time since his betrayal, Cale felt something beyond fear, exhilaration, the rush of danger intertwined with the rhythm of their hearts. And amidst it all, something tender and forbidden bloomed, an undeniable pull between them, unspoken but impossible to ignore. They found refuge in a hidden cave along the riverbank, damp and shadowed, but safe for the moment. Cale sank to the ground, chest heaving, eyes fixed on her. Why do I feel like I can trust you completely?" Lyra knelt beside him, brushing a strand of mud, streaked hair from his face. Her fingers lingered soft and electric against his skin. "Because you can," she said simply, "because I chose to be here, because I risked everything for you." Cale's hand covered hers, holding it to his chest. The warmth of her touch, the courage radiating from her, stirred something fierce within him. "And I don't want to lose you," he whispered, voice breaking slightly. Lyra's lips curved into a slow, deliberate smile. "Then don't," she murmured. "We're alive, aren't we? That's the first step. Everything else we face together." Outside, the howl of the Alpha King's pack echoed through the night. A promise of reckoning, of danger, and perhaps of vengeance. But inside the cave, the fire between Cale and Lyra burned brighter than any fear. They were fugitives, yes. Betrayed, hunted, and bloodied. But in each other, they had found trust, strength, and the beginnings of something that neither had expected, a connection that could defy even the cruelty of fate. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the river whispered secrets, and the night stretched endlessly. For Cale and Lyra, the war with the pack had begun, and amidst the shadows, a forbidden romance was igniting, passionate, defiant, and unstoppable. Dawn had not yet broken, but the forest was alive with tension. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call, sounded like a warning. Cale and Lyra had spent hours hiding in the cave, mapping the terrain in their minds, listening to the distant howls that signaled the pack's relentless pursuit. The world outside seemed merciless, but inside the cave, the air between them was electric, charged with adrenaline, and something else, something unspoken. Cale's gaze lingered on Lyra as she checked their makeshift weapons. Sticks sharpened to points, stones stacked for throwing, and a slingshot she had crafted from twisted vines. Mud streaked her face, wet hair clinging to her neck, yet she moved with a fierce grace that took his breath away. "You're incredible," he said softly, almost to himself, voice low. Lyra's eyes met his, dark and daring. "Don't forget it, you owe your life to me," she teased, though her lips curved in something tender. Cale stepped closer, his chest brushing against hers. "I don't care about that right now," he whispered, fingers brushing hers. "All I know is, I don't want to lose you, not here, not ever." Her eyes softened, and for a heartbeat, the chaos of the world outside faded. "Then stay close," she murmured. "We survived together, that's all that matters." Outside, the first members of the pack had reached the riverbank. They were scouts, sent to flush them out, sniffing the air, muscles coiled for attack. Lyra crouched low, hand gripping Cale's. "Ready?" Cale nodded, heart hammering, always. With a sudden burst, they leapt from the cave, charging through the underbrush. Lyra led the way, weaving through the trees, her instincts guiding them with deadly precision. A scout lunged, fangs bared, but Cale swung a sharpened branch just in time, striking with a mix of desperation and skill. Lyra ducked, rolling to the side, and sent a stone flying, striking another scout squarely in the chest. They moved as one, every glance, every motion, a silent conversation. Trust had grown in the crucible of survival, and now it became lethal synergy. Cale tackled another wolf, teeth snapping, claws slashing, the taste of adrenaline on his tongue. Lyra was a shadow beside him, fierce and unrelenting, forcing the attackers back with relentless courage. Despite their fear, A thrill coursed through both of them, a dangerous, exhilarating fire that neither had anticipated. Finally, the last scout fell back into the trees, whimpering and retreating. Cale and Lyra stood in the clearing, chests heaving, bodies covered in mud, scratches, and blood, but alive. Their eyes met, the relief and adrenaline mingling into something raw and undeniable. Cale stepped forward, pulling Lyra into his arms. "You saved me again," he murmured, fingers tracing the curve of her face, mud and blood smearing together. Lyra pressed her forehead to his, breathing hard. "I won't let them take you," she whispered. "Not now, not ever." The forest around them was silent, save for the distant retreating howls of the pack, and in that silence Cale realized something profound. Survival wasn't just about escaping death. It was about trust, about courage, about the bond forged in the darkest hours. And in Lyra he had found all of it. Their lips met then, tentative at first, testing, tasting the moment, the danger, the connection. It was messy, raw, and perfect. Mud and blood and fire mingling in a kiss that spoke of gratitude, longing, and something far deeper than either had expected. When they pulled back, their foreheads pressed together, both gasping, both trembling, not from exhaustion, but from the undeniable intensity of what had just begun. The hunt was far from over. The Alpha King's wrath would come, the pack would strike again, and danger was never far. But Cale and Lyra had survived, together, and in that survival they had found more than life. They had found each other. The night stretched before them, full of shadows, threats, and the promise of a passion that burned hotter than any fear. And as the moon rose over the forest, two souls bound by survival and fire prepared for the battles. And the love that lay ahead,